What's up everybody, today we're taking a look at Mythic Operation Floodgate, going over important trash abilities and boss mechanics. Starting off, you need to destroy 5 weapon stockpiles to unlock the last boss. These are marked out in the minimap, last one being locked behind the second boss. For the trash, Mecha Drone Snipers targets random players with snipe. You can line of sight this to avoid taking any damage from it, otherwise stun end cap to delay casts, and make sure to interrupt their trick shot. Even though it's very visually pleasing, deals damage to targeted players and ricochets to 4 additional targets. Moving on to the Shreddinator, casts Shreddination, spawning a saw blade under each player. Start moving at the end of the cast to minimize damage taken. Melee can bait and run with tank to conserve space. Will also target tank with flamethrower and then rotate during its channel. The loader bots fixate and chases random players while doing the old spin to win, dealing AoE damage to anyone near them. Make sure to stun, crowd control, etc. to keep them in check, and melee beware, it hurts more than you think. Dark Fuse soldiers apply a magic dot to tanks on attack. Black Blood Wound, make sure to dispel this. Interrupt Dark Fuse hyenas bloodthirsty cackle, it causes their melee attacks to heal them. It is an enrage, so it can be soothed. And you want to make sure to interrupt Venture Co Surveyor's surveying beam. Targeted player gets chased by a laser beam that spawns fire puddles. The Dark Fuse Demolitionist swaps between casting RPGGs, spawning circles everywhere, and reload, which enables RPGGs, stuns, knocks, makes them recast reload, so use those at the end of the cast and they do pretty much nothing. Use knocks, grips, etc. to move and stack them. Dark Fuse Inspectors teleports behind random players and casts Surprise Inspection. Healers, beware of Blood Warper's Warp Blood. AoE channel, dealing a ton of damage every second, and it applies a healing absorb. You also want to interrupt their Blood Blast, which can be spell reflected. Moving on to first boss, Big Mama. Boss starts with 4 Mecha Drone adds up and will respawn these after every jumpstart burn phase. You want to make sure to interrupt their maximum distortion, damages and knocks players back over its channel. Also dashes towards a random player with Doomstorm, spawning lightning swirls in its path. Nuke down the adds to trigger jumpstart, and during this, boss takes 200% increased damage and deals a ton of damage to the entire group. When it's finished, boss spawns Shock the Ground and respawns the Mecha Drones. Outside of this, the boss targets a random player with Sonic Boom. Aim this away from the group, it sends out a sonic disc that deals damage and silences and drags players along with it. Also has a big tank buster, Electro Crush, deals high nature damage and a nature dot over 10 seconds. Then we move on to trash before the second boss. Venture Co Architects nuke down their scaffolding first. They take 90% less damage when they're on top of it and will rebuild it after a bit. I mean, they do have the high ground after all. Will also cast Nail Gun on random targets, dealing damage and rooting them. Make sure to interrupt their maximum distortion. Down by the water, you'll also find Bombshell Crabs and Divers. Crabs detonates on death, applying a stacking dot to everyone, so careful with killing too many crabs at the same time. Divers spawn Seaphorium charges or mines. If you run into one, it explodes and you get knocked away. They also harpoon players and pull them in. Careful so you don't get pulled through a mine, unless you don't mind. In this area, giant red circles patrols. Stand in one and you get barraged with rockets, which you can 100% use to annoy your teammates. For the second boss, we have the Demolition Duo. Several bombs spawn around the boss area that will detonate after 30 seconds, inflicting a stacking dot on everyone, which most likely will wipe the group. Players targeted by kinetic explosive gel needs to be dispelled on top of bombs. Players targeted by bronze charge needs to aim it so that it hits a bomb, and he will charge several times in a row. When first boss dies, the other boss gains 20% damage increased every 4 seconds, so they need to die at roughly the same time. Following this boss fight, you get Disturbed Kelp. Make sure to stun and cap their Jettison Kelp cast, 5-sec channel dealing massive AoE to everyone. You want to make sure to interrupt their Restorative Algae. 15-sec heal over time can be dispelled. And for the third boss, we have Swampface. Throughout the fight, boss will entangle or chain 2 players together. Moving 14 yards apart pulls you back together, making their, for example, mudslide frontal potentially horrible. A simple rule: always dodge left. Works wonders. During a wake in the swamp, boss deals massive damage to everyone and spawns several swirls, which detonate, sending out waves that deals an unfair amount of damage and pushes you away. Never be near the big circles when they're about to go off to make dodging waves simpler. For tanks, boss does a massive tank buster. Sludge Claws deals a high amount of physical and nature damage, but it also puts an unethically large healing absorb on you, so healers and tanks beware. But overall, the difficulty here comes from linked players dodging mechanics in different directions. Then we have notable trash before the last boss. A lot of the same trash as before, but a few new types to look out for. One of which is Bubbles, which is a mini-boss. And he spawns bubbles underneath players. If you touch one, you pretty much die, and you can stack to spawn them stacked to conserve more space. Healers, beware of backwash stacking dot on the group. The Venture Co-Electrician applies overcharge to a random player. 12-sec magic dot. If not dispelled before it runs out, the player gets stunned for 5 seconds. So this time you can actually blame the healer. I think this is a first, right? And lastly, we have the Dark Fuse Jump Starter. Constantly spawns several blue circles and slams tank with Spark Slam, dealing a high amount of nature damage. Then we have the last boss. During turbo charges, boss fires tons of lines of ultra death lightning towards players. Don't get hit, send a name. And he channels this until he gains 100 electricity, tons of swirl spawns, and a few puddles of water. If they get hit by any electrical mechanic, the water gets shocked, dealing lethal damage and stunning players inside. For example, players targeted by gigazap can't touch any water for over 8 seconds. Same thing with tanks with Thunder Punch, knocking them back and leaves a nature dot. Don't touch the water when you're debuffed. When the boss casts Leaping Spark, several sparky boys spawn, fixate and chase down players. They will keep chasing a player until they hit water, which makes them despawn and electrifies and shocks the water. So if you're fixated, make sure to kite them into water puddles, and then it's just rinse repeat. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or tips and tricks for the dungeon. If you want to help support my channel, check out my Patreon, Twitch or YouTube membership. You gain access to the Stankie Discord, shoutouts and videos, virtual high five. Don't forget the usual stuff: like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell. It really helps me out. Thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next dungeon guide.